Okay, evolution part 2, natural selection explained. So we left off with talking about the history of stuff and Darwin and Lamarck and kind of setting the stage for how everything fits together. So now we'll go through the details of natural selection so that you are able to explain it. Okay, slide, come up. Where are you? Okay, maybe this one. Disappearing slides. Hang on. There we go. All right, so starting with misconceptions I find is a good thing because students usually have a lot of them in regards to natural selection. So we'll start with the misconceptions of of doom. So, for example, animals choose to adapt, right? I'm so evolved. It's scary. It's so 1814. I'm going to grow a third arm. All right, so let's go through those. So here are the big common ones that I hear all the time when I teach this. So organisms evolve in one lifetime. No! Takes, for bacteria, it doesn't take much time, but it still takes many lifetimes. And for mammals, many lifetimes and maybe thousands of years, maybe millions of years. So remember that evolution is a process that takes place over time. Organisms can choose to adapt. So if something changes in their environment, hey, you know what? I'm just going to change. I'm going to change color. I'm going to change my diet. I'm going to start eating something else. Like maybe plants aren't a good idea. I'm going to switch to becoming an omnivore now. Like, no, you can't choose adaptations. Natural selection is about being the strongest, healthiest, fastest. Survival of the fittest is about being the fittest, man. Being the strongest. I gotta be able to run. No. Survival of the fittest means being able to be the fittest in the environment that you are in. Being a fit. So, not being fit, but being a fit for that environment. Humans are not evolving. Sure we are, okay? But again, we're mammals. It takes a super long time. And we're not going to see it in our lifetime. And we're not going to see it in the history that we're perceiving. Evolution tries to say that humans came from monkeys. So when kids are learning biology, they'll say, I don't believe evolution because I don't think we came from monkeys. Well, of course we didn't. That's going back to Lamarck. That's what I mean by saying I'm so 1814, because then you'd be saying that there was a monkey and it, poof, became a human. And that's not how it works. Of course not. That's not evolution. That's back to Lamarckian. Being a Lamarckian, thinking you just transition from one kind of animal to another. That once you're a rat and then you're a mouse or something else. Then you're a bunny or whatever. And it doesn't work like that. So we're often talking about having common ancestors. So we have common ancestors with other primates. We did not come from monkeys. So other primates that are currently on the planet were not on the planet a million years ago either. Evolution is just a theory. Well, we also say gravity is a theory, but when you fall on your bum, it's a pretty believable thing. So by the time science says something's a theory, it means that it's a thing. All right, so for something to be a theory, it means that it has a ton of evidence. So we might in plain language talk about things that are theories like, well, that's just your theory. But in science, when something becomes a theory, it means it's basically like saying it's a fact. Organisms adapt to their environment. And that's a common phrase that we say all the time. And it's just not true. How can I explain it? Well, we're going to explain it a lot. It might be better to say this sentence over again as organisms that are currently alive are adapted to their environment, but they don't get to choose. They don't change. They don't adapt. We as humans might adapt to our current living situations, but we don't change the color of our hair. We don't grow more hair in the winter because it's cold now. We don't change our genetics to fit our situations. We may be really good and adaptive to our life situations, but we don't change our genetics to fit our environmental situation. If I eat right and exercise, my child will be healthy. Okay, so we cannot change our DNA in that way. We've talked about situations where we now know that some of our DNA can be turned on and off after, after we have our DNA set after birth. But that doesn't change the genetic mix that becomes sperm and eggs in meiosis. All right, so here's natural selection kind of made simple. So I made this little drawing here of a bunch of pretend organisms, which are really little button drawings, in an environment. And if you imagine, say, that all these buttons are prey, say they're like kind of like bunnies, okay? And so since they live in a green background, it's probably best if, say, you're going to be eaten by hawks, it's probably pretty good to be a green button, okay? But they just happen to be green. So they're all the same species at this point. They just have some genetic variation. And some of that genetic variation is successful in a green environment and some of it's not. And perhaps this square one is a mutation. And in this green environment, that mutation is probably not going to be really successful. So we have genetic variation, we have some mutations, and some are going to be successful and some not. So nature is going to select the genetic traits that are successful or not. So those that are best suited to this green environment are going to be the ones to survive and reproduce. And so being fit for the environment, survival of the fittest, is going to be the ones with the traits that are best adapted for this environment. So the ones that are just lucky enough to have the genetic variation, whether it's due to just lucky combination of genes or a lucky mutation, are going to be the ones that are the most successful at reproducing and surviving. So in this case, just because they blend in, because they happen to be prey. Other times it might be those that have the best ability to hunt in a certain situation or collect food or whatever it might be. So you can see that how it could be totally random. If our environment was pink, then the pink ones would be really good. Or perhaps if the prey only liked green, maroon, okay, then this one's going to really die out fast, okay? And it's going to be a really huge advantage to the predators that are really good at seeing gray maroon squares. Okay, and the predators that can't see gray maroon squares are going to start eating all the other stuff. Okay, so there's some other factors that can come into play at what makes you successful in the environment. Okay, so nature does the selecting. That's what natural selection is. So there's environmental pressures, okay, and selection pressures that say what makes you survive. Okay, so nature selects the traits best suited for this environment, and those that aren't best suited will eventually die off. And those with successful adaptations by genetics, not choice, pass their genes on. All right, so you cannot say that organisms adapt to their environments because they don't. They happen to have the best adaptations. So I would say that this is probably, these two slides are the most important to get practice being able to explain this. Okay. And here is an example of what it looks like over a couple generations. And if you look up natural selection on Google images or something, you'll see a whole bunch of things that look like this. And it's good to check them out, and they can show you them with organisms too. So if we start with one organism of a particular color, say, and say there's mutation or just genetic variability provides a whole bunch of different colors here, and one of them is extremely unfavorable. So this gets selected against. Bam, blue is dead. Okay, so nature selects against blue. Nature decides, nature selects, nature says blue is dead. Okay, but this color pink and this dark color red go on to reproduce. Okay, so the next generation, we have the brighter pink and the muted reds. And then they go on. But for some reason, this lighter pink is not as favorable. So nature selects again, and there's an advantage towards this more muted color red for some reason. So these individuals outcompete the rivals and survive and reproduce. So nature selects because these are the ones with the adaptations that allow them to survive in whatever environment. So they didn't choose these adaptations, they didn't choose to be born, they just happen to be the ones that are successful and get to be born. These ones do not get to reproduce because nature has selected against them. I hope this helps you understand natural selection, and if you don't at this point, you should definitely check out Darwin's finches and some other examples online and watch some videos. There's tons of stuff on this, and I encourage you to go forward. And the last video will be about the different pieces of evidence, and there'll be more about natural selection in that as well. Bye!